Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for being here. Hey, start hitting that like button, start hitting the subscribe, start hitting the notifications if you're watching over YouTube. If you're listening over Apple, you know what to do. Hit that 5-star rating, write a little review, help us fight the algorithm. We appreciate it. We have an awesome show planned for you today. Matt Gaetz, you guys know him. The House representative from Florida is going to join us, the man who helped us get a new Speaker of the House. He's going to join us here in just a few minutes. We're going to let him take a victory lap and talk about Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House. We'll do that with Matt Gaetz here in a couple of minutes. Just give me a couple of minutes and we'll get to Matt Gaetz. Steve Baker is going to rejoin us to talk about January 6th and the latest developments there. Anthony Walker, Virgil Walker, and TJ Moe will be here for some Tennessee Harmony. We'll talk about Halloween and how Christians should feel about Halloween. And then I'm going to end the show with a daily dose of Deion. And I got a good daily dose of Deion. So stay tuned for all that. Before I get to Matt Gaetz, I want to talk to you guys about Samaritan Ministries. Tired of someone else telling you where to go when you have a medical need? Are you ready to take control of your health care? Samaritan Ministries could be the solution you're looking for. They connect hundreds of thousands of Christians across the nation who come together through prayer, encouragement, and financial support when a medical need arises. It's not insurance, and you're not limited by restrictive networks. Say you have a medical need. You don't have to check and see what hospital is in your network or be concerned about the doctor being in network too. No, you go to the hospital, you choose, and don't give a second thought as to what's in network and what's not, because with Samaritan Ministries, you're in control of your health care. Afterwards, fellow members pray for you and send money directly to you to help you pay your medical bills. And when they have a medical need, you'll do the same for them. That's what biblical health care sharing looks like. Check it out today at SamaritanMinistries.org/fearless. All right, let's roll out to Florida and bring in a member of the House, Matt Gaetz, the man of the month, the man of the last 6 weeks or so, the man that got us a new Speaker of the House in Mike Johnson. Matt, thank you so much for rejoining the program. I really just wanted to give you a pat on the back and a big shout out, man. This is awesome what you've done, and just how, and again, you don't want to rest on your laurels or get overconfident, but how pleased are you with how the speakership turned out?
I'm very pleased. Mike Johnson is a man of faith. He is a constitutional scholar. He has been right there with us at the side of Jim Jordan as we've been pursuing these investigations into the Biden crime family. He is a mild-mannered person by nature. You're not going to see him be impolite to people or yell and scream at them, but he's very strident. He knows what he believes. It's driven by the Word of God and the Constitution that has governed the greatest country that's existed in all of human history. Now it's also about the plan, though, Jason. And we got the man, but we got to have the plan. And we had other folks, friends of mine, even people I supported in the speaker contest, who thought that the plan was to lump all of these agencies of government together with a continuing resolution. They believed that would give us an opportunity to maybe slow the growth of spending. My belief is that we have to review each of these agencies of government independently, that's what's going to allow us to ripen questions about what's working, what's not working. And we're doing that, as a matter of fact, this week on the Department of the Interior. And where we see programs that aren't helping folks, we're going to call for votes on them. And we're not going to win them all. That's how it goes. And at the end of the day, I think that the process that Speaker Johnson has embraced is one that all Americans can get behind and can really use for more transparency.
I saw a tweet from you where you were calling out Chuck Schumer for, hey, this Israeli package, it doesn't have money for Ukraine, it doesn't have money for Hamas. You guys are in position now to really push back against this out-of-control spending that's hidden in all these other packages. How important is that, and how important will Mike Johnson be in making sure that we can rein in some of the spending and some of the, particularly the foreign spending?
Yeah, and let's not pull any punches here, Jason. It's not just Chuck Schumer. It's Mitch McConnell as well. There's no light between Chuck Schumer's position on lashing Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan, whatever else you could think of together, and what Mitch McConnell's view is on that very subject. So they want to use what I think is a natural inclination of Americans to stand with Israel and to support a land that's got a 4,000-year connection to our faith. They want to use that to get support for Ukraine, which otherwise wouldn't exist. And then we just saw recently Lindsey Graham say that it's entirely partisan for us to demand pay-fors for foreign aid to Israel. Now, I don't think that's partisan. I just think that's logical, that if you're going to send $14 billion somewhere, Americans shouldn't have to suffer a diminished value of our money to accomplish that goal. We should make cuts somewhere else. And after the Inflation Reduction Act from Joe Biden, the IRS grew from a budget of about $12 billion a year to $80 billion a year. And so Mike Johnson's proposal is to take the $14 billion for Israel right out of the hide of the IRS. And Lindsey Graham calls that partisan. I think it's just smart budgeting.
So when you're willing to do what you did to Kevin McCarthy, you're willing, I lob you a softball, take Chuck Schumer's head off, and you go, no, let me tell you about Mitch McConnell. You're putting, I love it, but you're putting a bullseye on yourself. How, concerned, how much prayer do we need to be sending your way? Because these types of victories come at a price. And I'm sure you're aware of that, people want retribution.
You're absolutely right. I'll
for
take
what
all the
you
prayers
pulled
people
off.
will send. Sure. And you know what? I get it. You're right. You could get in these fights, and even when you win them, you could come out with a scratch or a scar or an eye poked out, and you got to keep going. I've been in Congress for 7 years. I was a state lawmaker 6 years before that. I never really held my tongue in either of those positions. And one thing I've learned, Jason, you come out of some of these fights, sure, you can be scratched or cut up a little bit, but from that, you grow calluses and grit and strength. And time and again, as long as you're fighting for the right things, for the people to be able to have clear access to the decision-making in government, I think the people ultimately reward that. But I've made a career not just reading the talking points from my political party, because frankly, it's not red team versus blue team here anymore. Oftentimes, it's the establishment of both parties against the rest of us. Like, take, for example, this FISA issue, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which has really resulted in the spying on Americans who were everyone from those who were in Washington on January 6th to people who were involved in the BLM riots in the summer of 2020. And I think we could actually make common cause between populists on the right and even progressive Democrats to stand against the surveillance state and the violation of our Fourth Amendment rights. So I don't just ascribe to this view that every Republican's right about everything, every Democrat's wrong. I try to take it issue by issue. And you're right, that can put a target on my back, but I guess I'll just have to wear it like a badge of honor. I don't know another way to do it.
So in the process, after the vacating McCarthy, when Jim Jordan gets defeated, and then at some point it looks like, well, Tom Emmer, he's going to be the guy. Was there ever a moment during that process of getting to Mike Johnson where you thought like, oh man, this isn't going to work out the way we hoped? Were you ever fearful and thought like, man, we're going to lose this?
I always knew there was a great reservoir of people who would upgrade the position of Speaker of the House. And I thought it was highly likely that we could get to one of those people. I view Jim Jordan as one of those people. I view Steve Scalise as one of those people. Even people who didn't run, like Jody Arrington, our budget chairman, could have led the House and has the leadership skills to do so. I've sat next to Mike Johnson for 7 years on the Judiciary Committee, and I know that he's someone who really takes great pride in bringing people together and inspiring what's best in folks to be able to get the most out of them on a team. And so I really did count him among those who would likely do a great job. But I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that anything in this town to acquire more power or influence comes with an element of risk. Of course, there was some risk that you would have had Republicans break away and join Democrats, some risk that you might have ended up with a more moderate speaker than a more conservative speaker. but I was willing to put my political career on the line. I was willing to work the long hours, meet with members, deal with their concerns about me in order to get to a position where we fulfilled two commitments: a Speaker of the House who was more conservative and a Speaker of the House who was more honest. There will be times I disagree with Mike Johnson as Speaker, but you know what? He's going to look me in the eye. He's going to tell me what he believes, why he believes it, and then we'll work through that. I think that is a more productive leadership style in the end than just making a bunch of contradictory promises to everyone. So it may look chaotic, but Jason, I believe in constructive chaos, that out of chaos, you can bring greater order and you can have a greater sense of unity and a sense of purpose. Everybody around here always wants to talk about unity, but unity is not an end unto itself. It has to be unity that brings you to a purpose. And I think that now we have to have a purpose of reducing spending, and I think Mike Johnson has got the skills to bring us there.
I've loved Mike Johnson getting this position and immediately talking about God, and that inspired me. I read something today, again, from your Twitter feed that, like, I didn't know this, and this makes me like Mike Johnson even more. You retweeted, I think, someone from the Daily Beast that said, Mike Johnson doesn't have any retirement savings, own a single stock, or have any assets at all. He has less than $5,000 in his bank account. He's got a $250 to $500K mortgage, a home equity loan, a personal loan. This is some kind of critique that or criticism they're leveling at him. And I'm like, oh, man, he sounds like working class and the rest of America. I like this. I like that he's not financially set. First of all, is this true? Is he really?
Well, he's got five kids. He's got 5 kids. He's put a bunch of them through college. And LSU, it's a state school, but it still takes money when your kids go to college. So, yeah, I think it probably is true. Mike Johnson is not somebody who is flashy with any sort of personal wealth. I think that he's a responsible family man. But here's what I love about that, Jason. The Daily Beast critique is that because Mike Johnson is not rich, he is corruptible. That's what they said. And, like, isn't that a lot better than someone who's already corrupt? Like, so many of the people I work with are corrupt. They corruptly trade stocks. They corruptly get their family members no-show jobs. They corruptly build wealth based on information they get. Mike Johnson hasn't. And so the critique is he must be corruptible. Maybe he's an evangelical Christian who actually values things more than money. And if that's true, I think that's something that is warm and inviting about Mike Johnson. Certainly not something to criticize, but it just kind of shows you, like, if he was rich, they would have criticized him for that. And because he's not rich, it becomes this whole new vector of critique.
It's one of those deals when I look at his biographical information and just who he is, it's one of those deals where I have to take a step back and say, hey, you know what? There's been more progress than what I've been giving credit for. That, you know, a lot of times we're losing everything and it's all terrible, but we just empowered a man who looks like MAGA and looks like working class America. That's a huge step, and it makes me go, hey, maybe things are going better than I thought. Yes, it's chaotic. Yes, it's ugly, but if we can reach the kind of right results as this, empowering someone who isn't afraid to shout from the rooftops that he believes that Jesus Christ is his Lord and Savior, and again, I hope that he, you know, gets in a better financial position over time ethically, but I like the fact that he's very relatable to the people who have no voice in this country, and that is the working class American.
And it does comport with a realignment in the policy outcomes, right? We used to think about the Republican Party as the country club party, the party that was trying to build wealth among the wealthiest. Well, now what we see is a policy portfolio that President Trump really animated during his time in office that builds a blue-collar boom within the economy, where wages start rising for people who produce things and make things. And we've got to advance those policies in the House of Representatives now, whether it's more energy production, to employ more people, whether it's rebuilding and restoring the infrastructure in our country, not pursuant to some weird DEI equity concept, but what will actually help our economy and our workers. And I think Mike Johnson's going to be a great face for that in the speaker's role. No one person is our political savior on all fronts in American political life. You know, we only get salvation from one place, and it's not government. But I do think that we can look at these trends, right? Mitt Romney is leaving the United States Senate because he said there were no other Mitt Romneys for him to collaborate with. I view that as a positive step for the Republican Party. Then you bring in someone like Mike Johnson, who is rooted in the right things and wants to empower the membership. You know, the first thing he did was pray. The second thing he did was give a speech about the importance of decentralizing power out of the Speaker's office so that more of the talents of people in Congress can be unlocked to solve the very serious challenges that we face. And then when Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and Chuck Schumer tried to roll our speaker and get him to bind Ukraine all wadded up together with Israel, he said, no, we are going to, in a very responsible and thoughtful way, address these things independently. Matter of fact, he delivered a letter to Joe Biden saying, I want these 12 questions answered about Ukraine before we even talk about sending another dollar. So that's more accountability, not driven by what the lobbyists and the defense contractors and the K Street power brokers want, but what just I think a regular American would expect given the trying times that we find ourselves in globally.
Matt, what percentage of your Republican colleagues are comfortable with the Republican brand moving to being the party of the working class? I see guys like yourself, and I see Donald Trump, as much wealth as he has, he's comfortable with it. What percentage of your colleagues on the Republican side are comfortable with that?
It's such a good question. And I think that the Congress is a lagging indicator. I think if you look at people on our school boards, people getting elected to mayoral positions, people in our state legislatures, there's a far higher comfort level with the inspirational, patriotic nationalism that President Trump advanced unapologetically. And in the Congress, maybe 60-40 have just a little bit of apprehension or reticence about, the Republican Party moving out of the country club and moving into the hunting club. I got no problem with that. We've just got to make sure that we get the policies in place to allow it to occur. And oftentimes you have to hold the White House to get these agencies to really execute on the will to see that vision come to fruition. But right now, I think that those folks who are like getting elected to school board, those tiger moms and those dads, they're going to be the next line change for Congress. They're going to be the one winning Republican primaries for Congress, I think, in the coming election cycles. And it's something I'm really excited about.
Matt, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for sticking to your promises and taking those bullets. Man, we appreciate it.
Thank you. I never know what we're really going to discuss, Jason, but I always love chatting with you, and I really appreciate you being so gracious as to have me back on your program.
Thank you. That's Matt Gaetz. He's done a great job. We're going to keep him in our prayers. Seriously, we're going to keep him in our prayers because the establishment is not happy with him on either side of the aisle. Guys, I want to talk to you about our inspiration. The fearless soldier, fearless army inspiration, preborn. You guys know, according to a recent survey, hundreds of post-abortive women, 60% in fact, reported that they would have preferred to give birth if they had received more support from others or had more financial security. And that's where preborn steps in and steps up. Preborn is there for women in their darkest hour, deciding between life and death of their precious child. You see, the reality is women are being pressured to make this fatal decision and are being told that their babies are just a clump of cells. Preborn welcomes women with God's love and introduces them to the beautiful life growing inside of them, which doubles their baby's chance at life. They do this with ultrasounds. When you support preborn, you not only support women, you empower them. Your donation of $28 will help a woman to make a choice that she won't have to regret for the rest of her life. You'll give her a blessing, the greatest blessing, life. You can do it by just dialing pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby. Or do it the way I like to do it. Visit preborn.com/fearless. That's preborn.com/fearless. Did I tell you what's going on tomorrow? We got the cookout, the gold jacket edition of the cookout. Brett Favre, Warren Sapp, Marshall Falk, and Brian Urlacher all here in studio with me here in Nashville. Man, it's going to be great. I hope you guys tune in. Can't wait for this conversation. Honored to have these great men, these great football players in studio with us. This show keeps getting bigger and better. What better could we do than have a cookout, share a little food, have a few beverages, and talk some football with four of the greatest football players of all time. You don't want to miss that tomorrow. All right, stay tuned. I told you guys I'm going to stay on the topic of January 6th. Steve Baker, reporter for The Blaze, he's going to come back and join us again. We've had him on previously. Talk about Harry Dunn. We're going to talk about David Lazarus. We're going to talk about what's the latest in the January 6th investigations and the release of tapes. We're going to do that next.
It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
Jason Whitlock, previously on Fearless.
I'm telling you, systemic anti-black racism exists here in America. Over the course of America's first 190 years, while white and black evangelicals deconstructed this system, this country's system of anti-black laws, policies, and cultural norms. During the last 60 years, white and black progressive elites rebuilt a system of anti-black cultural norms, laws, and policies. Starting with Lyndon Johnson's Great Society initiative, the Democratic Party convinced black Americans that our salvation and progress were tied to government assistance rather than obedience to and trust in God. The Great Society bribed black women to abandon the patriarchy, male leadership, and the nuclear family, the central pillars of biblical faith. All right, welcome back. As promised, Steve Baker, a reporter working with The Blaze, who's been at the forefront of a lot of the reportings on January 6th, is rejoining us. You guys have seen Steve on before. Steve, thanks for stopping back by on your way through Nashville. Been a lot of things happened since the last time I had you on the show. One, I had Tarek Johnson here in studio, and we did interview for more than an hour or so. Him, and Nick Searcy. You've done some additional reporting or published some stories about Harry Dunn. And then Sarah McAbee's husband, Colton McAbee, has been convicted and is awaiting sentencing. So I want to ask you about those three things. And first I want to start with, I was very shocked at what Tarek Johnson shared with me in terms of getting me up to speed on just how corrupt this whole thing seems to be, that the Capitol Police perhaps were set up. That was my biggest takeaway, is that they weren't in on it. They were just pieces on a chessboard that were moved around for the benefit of Nancy Pelosi, Yogananda Pittman, and the regime. That's what my biggest takeaway was from.
Yeah, ultimately, Jason, the United States Capitol Police is a very, very political organization, more political than most police forces around the country. And it's also one of the largest, but it's political because, as you can imagine, look who they have to protect. Look who their charges are. I mean, for instance, the United States Capitol Police are not subject to FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests. Well, why do you think that is? That's because Congress doesn't want themselves and their actions and their activities being exposed. It's another reason why the January 6th video has been so difficult to get our hands on, and because the access has even been, look, McCarthy did grant more journalists access. In fact, there were no journalists granted access prior to him taking the speakership, but it was very limited. And then it's also still a very arduous, difficult process to get what we need released to us once we identify stories from it. And we're still having that problem today. So there are political reasons for all of that, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that, look, Congress themselves, the Congress members, know that they are on those videos all over that building all the time, 24 hours a day. They're wandering around early in the morning, late in the afternoon, between offices. They would prefer that their actions, their own activities, not be seen and tracked either. It's one of the reasons why so few cameras in the entire mass of Capitol CCTV cameras are available.
The other thing that shocked me, and I don't think Tarek was naive. I think I would have done the same thing in his situation, and I don't know, I can't remember the congressman's name he reached out to. Mm-hmm. That he's telling the story like he's watching on TV and is like, man, the narrative on this is wrong. Let me reach out, and I can't remember the guy's name that he worked for specifically or protected most. And then he said within hours, that's when his career ended. The Capitol Police were at his door, basically taking his badge away, and led to 17-month suspension. What did you make of that story, of his decision to reach out and tell a congressman, like, hey, I want to be interviewed by the FBI. This story is not being told accurately.
Yeah, the senator who he's referring to slips my mind as well. But that particular story is interesting, and it probably was a little bit naive on his behalf at the time, although Tarek's a pretty smart guy. Yeah. The reality is that Tarek had worked on his protection detail.
I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, so he naturally thought that there was a relationship. Obviously, there was the opportunity to have maybe a friendly senator reach out on his behalf and maybe protect him from what was coming because of his, wearing the red MAGA hat that day in the crowd, those kinds of things, those kinds of expectations. And then, of course, he had a story to tell as well, because things weren't right that day. Things were not normal that day. There was an obvious, in his own, it had to be percolating in Tarek's mind at the time that he had seen a setup that day. And so reaching out was, like you said, probably something both of us would do to a friendly source. But because, again, of the politics of the situation and a narrative that was being constructed and a narrative that needed to be maintained, Nancy Pelosi famously, a year after January 6th, launched the commemorative one-year anniversary ceremonies and then ultimately the January 6th Select Committee by saying these words. This was her exact quote. She said, the purpose of this is to maintain and preserve the narrative of January 6th. Oh, I'm sorry, to establish and preserve is the exact quote. And so Tarek stepped into a political, grinder.
That preservation has included never interviewing Tarek, which seems amazing that he could have been that involved in major events on January 6th. He's a Capitol Police officer. Yogananda Pittman loses communication with him or ignores his communication, but no one wants to hear from him. That blows my mind, but it also doesn't surprise me because that's how little interest there is in actual truth.
Let me tell you something really interesting that we really haven't focused on Lieutenant Tarek Johnson's story, former lieutenant. I have his disciplinary report. It's called an OPR. It's a 140-page investigation, findings, discovery everything related to the disciplinary action taken against him for putting on that red MAGA hat, and then subsequently going in and helping or rescuing those 16 officers that had radioed a distress call in. And then, of course, the other thing that they had to nail him for was he recruited 2 Oath Keepers in the process of doing that. So they needed to take him down, which was part of the process of establishing and preserving the narrative of January 6th. So they had to. But the interesting thing, Jason, about his disciplinary action is they only started the investigation at 3 o'clock on January 6th. Everything that investigation and the disciplinary report and ultimately the findings that he was suspended for conduct unbecoming a Capitol Police officer for putting that hat on, it all starts at 3 o'clock. It completely leaves out the heroism of Tareq Johnson earlier in the day when he was setting up decontamination places for the Capitol Police and Metro Police, when he actually initiated the evacuation first of the Senate and then did the same thing again over on the House of Representatives side and initiated the evacuation over there, both without ever hearing from Assistant Chief Pittman over the radio, never getting permission from her, never getting any response from her. When he was saying, you know, I have copies of the radio transmissions as well, and he's calling it in. He's saying, I have a clear sight. I have a clear shot to get the senators out. I need permission. And then he finally actually says, I'll probably get the code numbers wrong. You hear him on the radio transmission say, I'll take the 550 and the 534, which is the disciplinary code for taking the initiative without permission from command. And he took that initiative, and as a result of that, he got those people out of there and got them to safety. But that's what embarrassed them. And that's ultimately why he was disciplined in the manner that he was and suspended for 17 months. And ultimately, when you look at the report, how can you judge any officer's actions for the day and leave out the first part of the day and the heroic actions and only focus on the MAGA hat?
Well, one officer they have focused on his heroic acts was Harry Dunn, and you guys have blown up the lie of all these N-words allegedly being shouted at him and other officers, but I think you have more stories coming out on Harry Dunn?
We basically could construct a TV show miniseries on Harry Dunn. Look. I think I told you the last time I was here. I have actually met Harry. I've spent 4 hours with him one time privately. It was an off-the-record meeting, so I'm not going to talk about what he said to me. I think I told you a little bit about what I said to him. And basically, I was trying to give Harry the opportunity to get ahead of this. And I have communicated with him many times since that meeting, a couple of months ago. And then about 2 weeks ago tomorrow, I gave him the opportunity. The last time, I sent him a really long, nice note and said, Harry, let me help you become a real American hero. And he went silent. He went silent on me. And the bottom line, Jason, is that Harry was elevated to the status of the hero of the day. He has received awards, acclaim, book deal, presidential medal, congressional medal. And unfortunately for him, when we start rolling out this video, it's going to show, first of all, that virtually everything that he said that he did that day, he did not do, or he did the exact opposite, or he behaved in the exact opposite manner. More tellingly, you think about it, it's been now, 2 years, 9, 10 months since January 6th. Have you ever, one single time in the dozens of media interviews that he has participated in, he's been interviewed from CBS. He was on The View last week doing his book tour. He's been MSNBC, NPR, New York Times. He's been everywhere. Has anybody ever showed a single second of video of his heroic actions that day?
Well, wouldn't they say, we don't have them, they haven't been released?
Why aren't they available through all the other open source video that has been captured and released that day? We've seen hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of police doing battle with violent protesters. We've seen now hundreds of hours of Metropolitan Police body cams. The only body cams that we see of Harry Dunn is when he's blowing up and losing control, and Captain Ben Smith coming over and putting his hand on his shoulder and saying, calm down, Harry.
Harry, not the most stable guy, is one of mine, and maybe not the most intelligent. And I say that just from the interviews I've seen with him. The way he unpacks the stories don't sound believable to me. And not just the way his actual stories just don't sound believable. It sounds like something that a useful idiot would say and portray things to be, and it just...
I would go so far as to say that much of what happened after he gave his first unnamed source, anonymous source story to BuzzFeed as the guy who revealed and talked about the racial epithets and the attack on himself and other black officers racially in the heat of the melee that day. Once that story was out and then he was elevated, I believe at that point there were people that were writing scripts for him.
Will he ever get in trouble, or will this all be swept under the rug?
I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Harry to actually get in trouble. He has been very carefully navigated through this legal process in terms of his trial testimonies with against the Oath Keepers. By a very powerful DC lawyer, and obviously nurtured by the Department of Justice and the FBI themselves in the process. And they have multiple interview transcripts with him, obviously the trial testimonies. And as I've watched and analyzed very closely as they work through those, they're leaving him in a position where he could have misremembered things. But the one person who can't be taken down that misremembrance trail is Special Agent David Lazarus, who backed up Harry's story about the Oath Keepers and said that he saw what happened 3 or 4 times and that it was always a contentious interaction between Harry and the Oath Keepers. The problem, of course, with Lazarus is he was never there.
And so you're saying David Lazarus could get in trouble. He doesn't have the outs that Harry Dunn has.
Lazarus should actually face serious problems and serious legal jeopardy over the fact that he perjured himself in this trial. And that's irrefutable by the video evidence. And there's more to Lazarus coming, which I can't get into yet. We have whistleblowers coming out on the Lazarus story now. And we have...
Just for the listeners, David Lazarus is head of security for Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah, he was on Pelosi's security detail. He's part of the Dignitary Protection Detail Service with the Capitol Police as a special agent. That's what he had done. He was protecting John Boehner before that when Boehner was Speaker. Then he took over the job overseeing Pelosi's security. And it was on January 6th that he was escorting senators across the street, across Constitution Avenue, through the tunnels to the Senate office buildings as they were evacuating them from the building when the Harry Dunn Oath Keeper event began at 2:44 p.m. But at 2:44 p.m., Agent Lazarus was across the street, quarter of a mile away. And then by the time he made it back, and we tracked him all the way through from camera to camera to camera as he worked his way back into the Capitol building and worked his way back over to the House side. And by the time he arrived at the actual location where the Oath Keepers and Harry Dunn had their moment, only about 5 or 6 minutes of their interaction together, it had long been over, and the Oath Keepers had already departed the building by the time Lazarus arrived back. So he could not have seen what he claimed to have seen in the trial.
Finally, Mike Johnson, new Speaker of the House. Kevin McCarthy made some big promises as it related to the January 6 tapes. Do you think Mike Johnson will make all the tapes available to the public?
Well, when he was in the final 9, when he had been narrowed down to 9 candidates for the position, every one of them were asked and polled, will you release the January 6 tapes? And he is one of the ones who said yes. In fact, all 9 said yes, that they would. I have high hopes for Mike Johnson for a couple of reasons. Number one, I would not be where I'm at right now in the investigations that I've been involved in if not for the fact that I met with Mike Johnson and Jim Jordan back in May of this year, and I was given access to even more, well, let's just say more access at the time through the Weaponization Committee, which both of them were on at the time. And then additionally, Mike Johnson also happens to be very dear friends with one of the attorneys for Oath Keepers founder, Stuart Rhodes. So they have a unique connection there and a real interest in getting the truth out about those individuals.
Steve, thank you so much for stopping back by. I've promised my audience, I promised myself, I'm going to stay on this story. Because I think it's important, I think it's fascinating, I think it says a lot about American justice and American injustice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
Guys, we've been talking to you about big tech censorship and telling you about a major step Blaze Media is taking to declare independence from big tech and ensure we can keep bringing you the truth no matter what. Well, if you go to Blaze Media's website, theblaze.com right now, you will see it's been totally overhauled. You'll see news articles, opinion, analysis, lifestyle, and tech commentary. But what you will not see are those obnoxious ads that are on virtually every other website. Here's why this is such a big deal. Most people don't realize that by having those ads on our website, Google was able to send bots to scour for any content they deemed unsafe for advertisers. After finding something they didn't like, they demand we remove ads from that article or else have our entire website demonetized. We dealt with this time and time again, and here's the worst part. After forcing us to remove ads from problematic articles, Google buried those articles so deep in the search results that they became nearly impossible to find. Google was essentially using its ad revenue as a cudgel to either force us to toe the leftist line or bury the unsafe content so no one could find it. That's why we're walking away from ads on our website. The decision to go ad-free will cost us millions of dollars, and we did not make it lightly. None of this is possible without you. We're counting on you to make sure we can continue to bring you unfiltered truth. We're taking a gamble by investing in some quality content, including expert analysis, insightful commentary, and authentic investigative reporting. Visit theblaze.com. Explore the all-new ad-free experience and see for yourself how we're standing up against the suppression and prioritizing independent journalism. Go to theblaze.com right now. All right, don't go anywhere. Give me that 5-star review, Tennessee in Harmony. Hey.
Jason Whitlock, previously on Fearless.
They're trying to emasculate men across the board, heterosexual, Christian men across the board. Black men just happen to be on the front lines. They've been emasculating and eviscerating and destroying us for 60 years. Those chickens are now coming home to roost as they turn their sights. And I understand why Matt Walsh and Jack Posobiec and Mike Cernovich, I understand why they're frustrated and they're fearful of like, hey, what are they planning for us? What are they planning for my kids? And what they're planning is exactly what they've done to black men and black boys. And that's why we need to unite as believers. And we need to identify to people exactly what anti-black racism looks like. And it looks like the matriarchy. It looks like a culture that abandons the patriarchy, abandons male leadership, and abandons God. All right, welcome back. Time for some Tennessee Harmony. Man, we got a full house. Anthony Walker in studio with us. Virgil Walker in studio with us. And my man TJ Moe is also here. We're going to have a good Tennessee Harmony. We're going to talk a little bit about Halloween. But as always, Anthony, start us with a prayer.
Father God, we ask that you bless us today as we discuss your word. Thankful to this opportunity to share in the discussion of your word, and bless those who are listening as well. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, so yesterday was Halloween. Halloween used to be one of my favorite holidays, as you can tell. But in recent years, I've grown a little bit uncomfortable with Halloween, as you know, just my faith walk and all that. And so TJ this morning sent me a clip of John MacArthur, the great John MacArthur, talking about Halloween. So let's play the clip of John MacArthur and his thoughts on Halloween.
It seems to be a divisive conversation, but do you think Christians should celebrate Halloween?
Do I? No.
Thank you.
Yeah, no. It's just ridiculous. What is it about? It's just a bunch of, it feels more demonic every year, and you know, they start pumping out all these books and all these movies and all these television programs that are just satanic fantasies of horror, and just awful. No, just avoid it.
Thank you.
Have a fall festival.
Yeah, I think that's where I come down, but what I would have added, and I mean, just speaking from my own perspective, was like, this is how we get kids in the habit of overeating and eating junk food. And again, seriously, and I sit back and think and remember like, oh my God, I'd eat a bunch of candy that night, and then all week, you know, you'd pack up your candy and take it to school with you or whatever. It's like, man, we're just poisoning kids. But anyway, one more biblical point, even though I think that is consistent with a biblical point of view. But Anthony, where you fall on what?
MacArthur, I'm very close to his position. Just to give a brief kind of history of it, biblically, the closest that we can get to is Leviticus. I think it's Leviticus 19. Exodus speaks of it as well. Anything tapping into witchcraft, the occult, attempting to tap into the demonic realm was forbidden. Okay. Now, depending on your origin story of Halloween, there's All Hallows Eve, there's Day of the Dead, and it's really a conflagration of a lot of different things. You know, holidays 90% of the time are man-made. So, you know, it's hard to find a hard and fast biblical yay, nay on this. But I will add this, which is where MacArthur's going. Let's stay away from the demonic. Let's stay away from that. Now, you know, our church, we have had in many times, it's been difficult getting back since COVID, but we've had, you know, fall festivals. We've had, you know, obviously the kids are going to hear about getting candy and all this kind of thing, and we can do some of that stuff as well, but we're away from the occult and the demonic, and that's where we see the world as a whole is headed towards that way.
People when I was growing up, we put on a Batman outfit. We're not doing that anymore.
No.
Virgil, you're.
Well, yeah, our church does the very same thing. You know, we have previous churches I've been a part of had some kind of fall festival and the like, and that's kind of the way that they approached it. One of the things that we've been doing as a family since, gosh, far back as I can remember, the kids were maybe pre-teenage years. We recognize October 31st, 1517, right? On October 31st, 1517, Martin Luther would nail the 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg, Germany. And it was the beginning of the Reformation. So everything that we understand as Protestants, as Protestants, against issues related to the Catholic Church, we celebrate that. As reformers, that was when the doctrine was understood, or at least recaptured, the doctrine of justification by grace through faith alone. So you had the 5 solas of the Reformation that would come out of that. You know, sola gratia, sola fide, so grace alone, faith alone, soli deo gloria, for God's glory alone, solus Christus, for Christ alone. So all the issues related to salvation. So we're saved by grace through faith in Christ, according to Scripture, to God's glory. So we use the 31st as an opportunity to teach our kids why we're Protestants, why we stand on the firm foundation of the Word of God. And we put all the things that Anthony kind of talked about celebration-wise around it. At the church that I'm a part of at Praise Mill there in Atlanta, that's what they did. They had a Reformation Day. And so all the kids came. They dressed up as some of the reformers. I think I just came back from London, from Britain, where we did a British Reformation tour, and we went to all of the places and spaces where the reformers gave their lives and died for the cause and sake of Christ. So it was incredibly encouraging. So to come back and to celebrate the 31st now as Reformation Day was a great way to not only take something away, which you don't want them worshiping demons or dressing up like demons, but it is also an opportunity to add to. So we added that to it and explained the 5 solas of the Reformation and let folks know we're saved by grace through faith in Christ according to Scripture, God's glory. In addition to that, we recognize Martin Luther was the reformer that kicked everything off with his 95 Theses that he nailed against the door in Wittenberg.
Excuse my delivery here, but I think it's like the closet slut holiday of the year. It is. It is.
You're approaching it from the adult perspective.
TJ.
Even the good girls that I know, good girl, that's why I say closet slut. It's their excuse to dress as skimpy and crazy and terrible as they want, and it's just okay because it's Halloween. Yeah. You would never present yourself this way, but it doesn't start in college. Now it's like 16-year-old girls are doing this, and it is marking its way down. So there's a cultural shift that Halloween is about culturally, nothing more than that. Go be as crazy and promiscuous and slutty as you want, and that's totally fine. So that's one thing. That I started to notice that through college. I'm like, what are we doing here? Even the good girls that I know, I'm like, I'm not going on a Halloween because I don't want to see you like that, and I don't want to think of you like that. So that was one. A second part, and I think this developed when I had kids. I don't trust anybody. I can't imagine taking my kids trick-or-treating. Who knows what they're putting in this candy? Who knows what they've done? It's not a chance. Yeah. We're not going door to door. I didn't as a kid, but just generally speaking, I don't trust anybody. As crazy as the world's gotten, not a chance. And even as we go through, like, I don't remember it being this way. You guys, different generation, I'm sure it wasn't this way. Halloween is just all about the dead. It's about witches, it's about skeletons, it's about ghosts, it's about evil spirits, scare fest. It's like, to me, that's anti-biblical, right? We're supposed to be fearless, and Halloween's all about being scared. Yeah. Go around, be frightened. Let's go to a haunted house. Let's go. I hate all that stuff. And so, generally speaking, in America, and I don't know if this is uniquely American, but I don't like it, we have way too many holidays. Halloween is one of those. I think we should pick 4. The 4 that I like: Easter, the 4th of July, we can celebrate America, Thanksgiving, that is biblical, we should be thankful, and Christmas. And that's it. And you could throw in Veterans Day, but I just celebrate that on July 4th. Let's have a quarterly holiday and get rid of the West. What are we doing on Cinco de Mayo?
You left off Juneteenth.
Cinco de Mayo, Juneteenth, St. Patrick's Day. What are we doing?
Yeah, my birthday. That's all in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's one of the things where Halloween presents, I think, an opportunity for ministers, because as I sit and think about this, Halloween hammers the importance of the church because because you got kids, all you got kids, yours are grown, but TJ and Anthony still got young kids. And if you're not connected to a church, they have no choice but to get swept up in everybody else's presentation and version of Halloween. Whereas if you're connected to a church can put you in a whole different environment and a whole different way of celebrating Halloween. And so it just helps you understand, particularly for families, the importance of being connected to a church.
You're right. I'll say this as well, from a cultural perspective. I know we're dealing with it from a faith-based and biblical perspective, but from a cultural perspective, in your generation and kind of toward the tail end of mine, we were more community-oriented. And so, going back to TJ's point, we already knew all of our neighbors down the street. We knew everybody in the neighborhood. And so, getting candy, and even like you were talking about, we dressed up as Batman, we dressed up as, just silly. It was like a fun dynamic. But now we are so much more isolationist, individual. We're so much more, untrusting. We don't know our neighborhoods. We really don't care to know, because what's going on in their house and so it does drive us back to the last bastion of community, and that's the church. Right?
It really, and Anthony, you just hammered a point in terms of, let's say people do 50% of their shopping now online. And so I can remember when we grew up, even when we lived in apartments, everybody shopped at the Kroger. And so you'd run into each other, your neighbors and people in your neighborhood at Kroger just around the corner. Well, when you Instacart, you don't run into your neighbors. You don't run into them at the mall anymore. And
we don't go to the mall anymore.
Yeah, we don't. It's a lot of it's online. And so, because when TJ made that point, I was like, when I was a kid, we went trick or treating, and it was no big deal. That was Johnny's daddy or mama or whatever that we went trick or treating. And now it's a stranger on the other side of the door. And there is no community connection. And so, once again, these events or whatever, we need to take these secular events that kids, because they'll be hearing about it from their peers or whatever, and the church needs a version of its own that works.
I think you're right. Churches, I think, are wising up to that idea with Fall Festival, the thing that we did with Reformation Day, and encouraging that. But I'm with you. Toward the end of my kids kind of growing up, most of them are out of the house. I've still got one at home. There were kids showing up at my door I didn't even recognize. And so by the end of their, by the end of their teenage years, when they're kind of walking out of that, I didn't even recognize. And then what I found out from my preteens was that they didn't necessarily want to get candy from our neighborhood. They wanted to identify kind of the rich neighborhoods, because they would go to the rich neighborhoods and knock on those doors. Even though they weren't nobody recognized them, it didn't matter, because they gave the king size Snickers rather than the small size Snickers.
Hold on, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I lived in one of those neighborhoods in Kansas City, and I was known as the Halloween king.
I was more of a king than you, Jason. I'll tell you the story. Go ahead. I'll tell you why.
Again, if you knocked on my door, you were getting at minimum $5 to $7 to $10 worth of candy.
You were handing out diabetes.
Individual, It was like, it would be the only place you needed to go. If you just knocked on one door, Halloween's over. It's a wrap.
That's it.
So by the time, and I lived in that house maybe 10 years, and by the end, my reputation was so massive. people would be coming from other
areas.
neighborhoods. Just to, and everybody, every year, every kid. And then when the kids would get old, they'd go off to college or whatever. I might run into them and they'd say, "Man, I used to come to your house for Halloween."
Yep.
So I was that was my reputation.
You were the king in giving the candy.
Yeah.
I was the king in getting the candy.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
we were dirt poor. I've told y'all this. I was poor growing up. And my uncle took us to the dollar store, and they had these 4 packs of just little cheap masks. You just put a rubber band around it. There's 4 different masks. We would go out 4 times. So I would have hit your house 4 times. I've got a Jason mask the first time, trick or treat. I've got a Ninja Turtle the second time, trick or treat. I came back with a pile of candy.
Yeah.
I was the king in that way. I got all the candy.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, we're going to keep it tight today. I appreciate you guys coming in. Virgil, it's good to see you
Great
here
to
in
be
town.
here, man. Honored to
I
be
see
here.
Anthony once a week. I see TJ at least once a month. We got some other things to talk because Virgil's here to help us hopefully start announcing our plans for Roll Call 2.0.
Yep.
Virgil's here doing some legwork for that. So thank you, and stay tuned for more. When we come back, I'm going to go solo when we come back and give you your daily dose of Deion. Next.
Jason Whitlock, previously on Fearless.
The left maintains a culture that systematically imposes low standards and even lower values on black people. These reduced standards and values are designed to destroy black men. Mike Johnson has told no lies. His black son, Michael, is facing a much stronger headwind than his white son, Jack. That does not mean Jack has a wind at his back. He doesn't. He's facing a headwind too. What is being done to black boys and men is now being done to heterosexual white men. I want to challenge Matt Walsh, Jack Posabiec, and Mike Cernovich to avoid harsh judgment of Mike Johnson until we've had a chance to make him elaborate on why his black adopted son faces a more difficult climb. What Johnson said in the summer of St. George Floyd might be different from what he should know to be true now. His white son is next on the chopping block. The massacre of men should unite all evangelicals. We united to end the previous forms of bigotry Democrats supported. We can do it again. We owe it to our ancestors. All right, welcome back. Time for your daily dose of Deion. So all you, do I got my tissue? Where'd my tissue go? Oh yeah, here it is. Tissue from yesterday. I want to make sure that everybody has their tissue ready. You Deion groupies are going to start whining and crying. I've got your Kleenex right here. But Deion and his team, I don't know if you've heard this, but they got robbed during the UCLA game. Their locker room got robbed, and it appears that UCLA's locker room also got robbed. And Deion had something to say about that. Let's watch the clip.
Our kids got robbed during the game last week. I think that's a travesty, and I would expect the NCAA to do something about that. These are college kids. I'm pretty sure they don't think about insurance at this point in this juncture in their life. We've talked about NILs and how to really maintain their finances. We've pretty much given them financial planners and given them the resources for that. But the insurance part of it, we slipped, and we didn't really educate them on that. So I wish, I know the kids would be forthright in what was stolen, and some of our just staff members as well. And now all that stuff should be replaced. This is the Rose Bowl. They said the granddaddy of them all, right? I'm sure granddaddy has some money. Grandpa should have some money to get these kids. I'm going to have a list made out from these young men, and I know they're going to be truthful about what they lost so we could try to get that back for them. They may not be able to get the items back, but we should be able to reimburse them. That was unbelievable. But I did hear that the home team was robbed as well. So I don't know, but I did hear that. But that don't make no sense when you're out there balling and playing your heart out and you're getting robbed in the same aspect. So I hope we could do something about that NCAA. You do something about everything else. Do something about that. When it comes to kids, in regards to the kids, NCAA, you do something about everything else. Do something about this one.
So that was Deion Sanders yesterday at his press conference. Funny thing, I found this humorous, and Deion groupies, prepare to get your panties all in a bunch, but Deion sounded like me. Did Deion say, did anybody else listen to that? He sounded like a fat person that was breathing through his nose and mouth and the whole deal. I'm like, wow, what's going on with Deion? He's out of breath, but that's, as a fat person, that's the kind of thing you notice. When you see a skinny person sounding like you, it kind of throws you off. But more than anything, I'm just sitting there like, Deion is arguing that the NCAA should reimburse his players for their mistake or some breach of security in Los Angeles. This blows my mind. And that the Rose Bowl or the NCAA owes these kids money and it should be reimbursed. That's not how life works. And if you don't, because, we dropped the ball, we should have told them about insurance, blah, blah, blah. We're telling them how to maintain their finances. We've got people how to maintain their finances. And this is the part of the stuff that annoys me about Deion, particularly being at 56. You can't maintain your finances buying gold chains. It's a dumb investment. And so as a coach and as an adult, I don't want to be relatable to kids. I want to give young people sound advice. And even though it's advice they may not take, I'd rather be giving them that advice. Hey guys, don't buy gold chains. It's stupid. If we're paying you $100, $200, $500,000 through NIL, hey, take that money and invest in stocks and bonds. Take that money, buy real estate. Take that money and don't waste it on gold chains and material items that are meant to cover up your insecurities. Don't be like me, because that's why Deion at 56 is still wearing big gold chains and sunglasses, and he's all worried about his appearance. And literally, and I'm not, because, guys, I'm horribly flawed, and I talk about it all the time, but I'm not going to give people dumb advice that has hurt me or I've seen it hurt others. How many broke 30 for 30 documentaries do we have to see before Deion starts telling athletes, hey, here's some of the mistakes I've seen other athletes make and young people make when they get a bunch of money? They go out and buy gold chains, earrings, gold grills. They blow their money on things that are meaningless when they could invest that money and use it down the road or build a nest egg down the road. They could use that money more appropriately. Give that advice, even though the kids may ignore it. But then when they don't insure it and when they insist on flying it across country for a football game on a business trip, why do you need your gold chains on a football trip? I mean, I know Deion has it, and that's the message he's sending to those kids in that locker room, that gold chains are important. But at what point does Deion snap out of it and act like an adult and act like a mature adult that realizes, hey, some of the things that I did in my youth, some of the things I may have done in my 30s, 40s, some of the things I may have done last year are actually inappropriate, and I should tell kids, hey, don't do it. But Deion's going to Deion. But here's the other thing I found interesting. And guys, I think you guys got these clips loaded wrong. I want the Doc Holliday clip from yesterday where he talked about Deion and his players getting robbed at Jackson State. And he wanted them to have that level. He wanted Deion to have the same level of smoke he had for Jackson State when he complained about getting robbed there. He was challenging Deion to have the same level of smoke, bad mouth, or criticism or anger towards the Rose Bowl or whoever, the people in Los Angeles. I think it's these. I sent y'all both clips, but I want to play the one from yesterday first. Not when he's wearing the hoodie. Yes, Doc Holliday on the, play that one.
Hey, Deion, Coach Prime, you may see this, you may not, but I don't know if it's a question, but I remember when you went off, when you were coaching at Jackson State, when you said somebody stole all your stuff out of the coach's locker room, and you pretty much lambasted the university, lambasted the city, and how could that happen? You know. Seemed to be pretty peed off, and seemed to be going at the school and the university pretty hard, and the football program pretty hard at Jackson State. Now, according to reports, the same thing just happened at the Rose Bowl when y'all were playing UCLA. So really need to see that same kind of energy and that same kind of outrage that you were showing when you were at Jackson State. Got to now. Come on now. Got to be fair in this now. If you're going to go off and be so mad when you was at Jackson State, you got to show the equal amount of consternation for UCLA and what happened at the Rose Bowl if your team's stuff got stolen. Come on, man.
I think it's a great point. And Doc is a sports television anchor in Memphis. Doc is a former college football star at Memphis. Doc had a cup of coffee with the St. Louis Rams, I believe in 1996, 97, whatever. Doc was a teammate and very good friend of Isaac Bruce, the great Rams wide receiver. And again, he went from being an athlete in Memphis for the Memphis Tigers, brief career in the NFL and in the CFL, and has been a longtime sports anchor in Memphis, Tennessee. I've been fascinated by Doc for several years. He puts out very interesting content, and he seems like guy's like 50 years old. He seems very intelligent, very grounded in his point of view and worldview and the things he talks about. Well, he followed that up because I think he's accurate here. When Deion was at Jackson State, he was angry. He's, complained about getting robbed at Jackson State, blah, blah. And now he comes back and gets robbed in Los Angeles or in California at the Rose Bowl. And it's, hey, NCAA, reimburse these kids. Hey, Rose Bowl, reimburse these kids. You guys got the money. Give them their money back. They'll tell you what they lost. Give it to them. He wasn't. He did seem to have a different energy as it related to what happened in Los Angeles. I wonder why, and I'm going to expound on why that might be here in a second. But I want to play you this video that came out today. Doc Holliday inspired me, energized me, gave me hope. Like, oh man, the scales are really coming off people's eyes. People are talking about the real issues as it relates to Deion Sanders because he put out that video yesterday. The Deion worshipers attacked him, and here's how Doc Holliday responded.
To all you Deion Sanders stands, fans, loyalists, fanatics, groupies, who have so many disparaging things to say about me and say to me, ooh, my gosh, grown men, defending the grown men, getting so much in their emotions about another grown man when I didn't say anything bad about him. I just posed the question. Y'all don't want to ignore all the video. Y'all probably hadn't seen him. Well, I was speaking up for him and his family. But I just posed the questions. But anyway, it's all good. But in the words of you all's idol, what about me will make you think that I care about your opinion of me? Your opinion of me is not the opinion I have for myself. All praises to the Most High. And I'm going to tell y'all, just like I told Coach Deion Sanders, the GOAT always loses in the end. He know what I'm talking about, because the GOAT is his best friend and the best friends of his celebrity partners. You all might not know what I'm talking about, but he knows what I'm talking about. The GOAT always loses in the end. All praises to the Most High, the one and only God. Y'all have an amazing day.
And so I'm just telling you, for me, I was like, oh my God, there's someone else out here in the world who gets it, who knows exactly what I've been getting at. The GOAT is Baphomet. The GOAT, there's all of this symbolic. It's satanic. And that's what he's getting at. That Deion and all the rappers and his celebrity friends and that whole movement, it's idolatry. It's devilish. It's wicked. It's an energy that's being tapped into. It's being dressed up by Deion's pretty words and his references to God and thank God, blah, blah, blah. But the real energy at the heart of what's going on with Deion Sanders, and I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable, but no man should be comfortable with the level of idolatry that's being showered on Deion Sanders this football season. No man that believes in God should be comfortable with that. The real believers are being persecuted, not worshiped, not celebrated all over the culture. If Deion were representing something real, he would not be the toast of ESPN and Fox Sports. He would not be the toast of social media. Men wouldn't be running around like groupies worshiping him. It's a sign that Deion's playing for a different team. Now, he's done dressed it up, and he'll say, God bless this, and I just want to thank God. But that's not the team he's playing on. So, blew my mind to see Doc Holliday play that card, the whole truth about Deion Sanders. But that is the whole truth. And people can hate me because I've been, I got to give Doc credit because he went straight to the root. I've been tiptoeing around. I've been pointing out all the symptoms without telling you what the symptoms say the diagnosis is. But anytime you got all them rappers and the whole Hollywood elite and all that, and the whole mainstream media worshiping you and taking pilgrimages to Boulder, Colorado to celebrate you, you ain't walking with God. You're in on it. And so I want to go back to one other thing as it relates to Deion and the advice and his stewardship, his discipleship, his mentorship of these young people at Colorado. And so let's move the spiritual thing to the side. Let's just deal with street sense. And that's, again, where Deion has a failing. And I don't care where Deion came from 40 years ago. These pampered elite athletes that have spent 40, 45 years, or even 20, 15 years being worshiped, they have no street sense at all. They're pampered elites. And so when Deion is inviting the rap world into his locker room, into his sidelines, into his game day experience, into his all-week experience, he's inviting the gang criminal world into his environment. He's Offset on the sidelines, Key Glock in the locker room. Who's the dude that spoke to the team inside during the week of prep? I can't remember which rapper. All these rappers are gang connected, gang related. They may not be gang bangers, but they all, for street credibilities, they all run with gangs. And so they have friends. And so when and again, many of them do a lot of business in California and Los Angeles. That's home ground. And it's I'm gonna tell on myself all the way. I'm gonna just tell y'all how much I know. And again, the kind of wisdom, Deion bringing Brittany Renner into locker rooms like he's teaching these kids game. Let me put Deion and the groupies and everybody up on real game. You invite the rappers in, they're connected to gang members. When they go back home to keep their strip, man, the Rolex Shedeur got, the gold chains that Shilo has, the gold chains that all these players have, they making all this NIL money. And man, they locker room looks like a jewelry store. And so when the people you've invited into your environment go back home and just start gossiping about you, you've put a bullseye on their back. They start gossiping around people, oh, and they coming to LA? We're gonna get at them. That'll be a nice score. You got a bunch of idiots flying in from Colorado with their gold chains and cash and all that other stuff. Oh, that's gonna be a nice score. I got a friend that works security at the Rose Bowl. All of this flashy, in your face, hey, look at my Rolex after the game. You're putting a bullseye, you're putting a target on your kids. These dudes have no street sense. When you hear about someone getting home invaded, I'm just keeping it real. When you hear about someone getting home invaded, that is generally speaking from a man who had an escort visit him in his home. And when the escort goes back and tells her pimp that this is what I saw, this is what he has, then the pimp and his compatriots, the people he's in on, they start plotting on, oh, we're gonna run up on this man's house and get what he's got. This is just what happened to Deion and UCLA. They put a bullseye, a target on themselves by who they keep inviting into their home. You got all these kids making hundreds of thousands of dollars and blowing it on jewelry and running around with cash and trying to be baby rappers. This is what goes along with it. There's a reason why rappers get killed constantly. They run with a criminal element that doesn't mind killing people and doesn't mind snatching chains off of people. No street sense here. Deion looks cool, looks the part, and blah, blah. Oh, he's part of the culture, and he's this, and he's that. This is a simp. This is someone with no street sense. And at 56, still wearing gold chains, running around like a little kid. And he's preparing these young men for life after football. Give me a break. Give me a break. And be mad at me because I'm grown and can see it for what it is, and am willing to say it for what it is. But these are the facts. And so all the other little groupie simps all over YouTube and every place else that will not tell you the truth, Deion and that environment, that culture that he's created at Colorado, put them kids in harm's way. But now he wants the NCAA or the Rose Bowl to bail out his mistake. That's your daily dose of Deion. We'll play Harmony, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Up so divided, stop fighting and stand tall. We used to be a nation, one united. Now we're headed for downfall. God, let your light shine down. What we need more than anything now, harmony. Let's make a simple vow. Let's come together now. Harmony. Put all your weapons down. Love one another now. To wake up, choose love, my sister, my brother. See through the lies they tell us. 'Cause together we're so much stronger. God, let your light shine down. What we need more than anything now. Harmony. Let's make a simple vow. Let's come together now. Harmony. Put all your weapons down. Love one another now.
The enemy won't let it get to me.